The air on the command deck was thick and still, like the calm before a storm. But the storm had already been raging for 3 weeks. The only light came from the red and yellow alert symbols flashing on the main screen. A low, constant beeping was the only sound, a heartbeat for a dying station. Kaido sat at his communication station. His uniform was rumpled. Dark circles were under his eyes. His fingers moved over the controls, sending the same message again and again. It was a plea for help, a desperate call into the silent, uncaring stars. United Galactic Council, this is Serenity Point. Our situation is critical. The Cthar swarm has breached the outer defenses. Main power is failing. We request immediate reinforcements. I repeat, our situation is critical. He leaned back, running a hand through his messy hair. There was no answer. There was never an answer. The door to the command deck slid open with a hiss. Hannah walked in. She was the chief engineer. Her hands were covered in dark grease, and her face was smudged with it. She looked even more tired than Kaido. The main shield generator is failing, she said. Her voice was flat, all emotion drained from it by exhaustion. I have rerouted power from life support on the lower decks, but it's not enough. It's like putting a small bandage on a deep wound. The generator will overload in 6, maybe 8 hours. Then, nothing will stop the Cthar energy beams from hitting us directly. Kaido nodded slowly. He had expected this news. And the planetary defense cannons? Useless, Hannah said, shaking her head. She walked over to a monitor and pulled up a video. It showed a large, insect-like creature, a Cthar warrior. Its body was covered in a hard, shiny, dark shell. A UGC soldier fired a bright blue energy beam at it. The beam hit the creature's shell and spread out harmlessly, like water on glass. The creature did not even slow down. Their armor absorbs our energy weapons. We are throwing light at them. It is annoying them, not hurting them. Just then, a sharp, clear tone chimed from Kaido's console. It was different from the alarm sounds. It was an incoming message. His heart jumped into his throat. He turned back to his station. His fingers suddenly clumsy with hope. A text message appeared on his screen. It was from UGC Command. Kaido read it aloud, his voice a mix of relief and disbelief. Message received. Serenity Point. Reinforcements are en route. A human contingent will arrive at your coordinates in approximately 4 hours. Hold your position. Help is coming. A human contingent? Hannah asked, her eyebrows rising. What does that mean? A squad? A company? I do not know, Kaido said, a real smile touching his lips for the first time in weeks. But they are coming. We just have to hold on for 4 more hours. He opened a channel to the entire colony. Attention, all personnel. This is Communications Officer Kaido. Reinforcements have been confirmed. They will be here in 4 hours. I repeat, help is on the way. A weak cheer came from a few people on the command deck. The mood lightened just a little. The heavy weight of certain doom felt a tiny bit lighter. Hannah, however, did not look as happy. She crossed her arms. Humans, she muttered. I have heard things. What kind of things? Kaido asked. Strange things, she said. They are unpredictable. They do not follow standard galactic military protocols. Their technology is different. Older, some say. Who cares? Kaido said, his voice full of hope. They are coming to help us. That is all that matters. For the next 3 hours, they fought to survive. The Cthar seemed to sense their weakness. The attacks came harder and faster. The station shook from the impacts of energy blasts against the failing shields. Hannah was everywhere at once. It seemed. She was on the command deck, then in the engineering bay, then crawling through an access tunnel. She was trying to keep the power flowing, trying to strengthen the shields even a little. She used every trick she knew, but it was like trying to stop a flood with her bare hands. Kaido coordinated the few defense forces they had left. He sent soldiers to the areas where the shields were the weakest. He knew it was a losing battle. He was just trying to buy time. For hours. They just needed to last 4 hours. The main view screen showed the battlefield outside. The black space was lit up by the green energy beams of the Cthar ships. They were not like UGC ships. They were organic in shape like giant bugs. They moved quickly and in perfect harmony, like a swarm of bees. The UGC ships, what was left of them, fought bravely. But their bright blue lasers did little damage to the Cthar hulls. One by one, the UGC ships were surrounded, overwhelmed, and destroyed. They became silent, floating tombs in the dark. With 1 hour to go until the reinforcements arrived, the worst happened. A massive explosion rocked the command deck. The lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency red lights. Kaido was thrown from his chair. Alarms screamed a new, more urgent warning. What was that? He yelled, pulling himself up. Hannah was at a console, her face pale in the red light. They hit the primary power coupling on the station's spine. The main shield is down. I repeat, the main shield is down. We have no protection from their weapons now. Through the view screen, they saw the Cthar swarm move. Their ships turned, pointing directly at the now defenseless colony of Serenity Point. It was the beginning of the end. The reinforcements? Kaido whispered, his hope crumbling. Where are they? He turned to his long-range sensor screen. He searched the empty space near the colony. There was nothing. No fleet of powerful UGC battleships. No advanced alien vessels. His heart sank. Then, a small, faint signal appeared at the very edge of the sensor range. I have something, he shouted. Hana rushed to his side. Is it the fleet? Kaido focused the sensors. The image became clearer. It was not a fleet. It was not a powerful, gleaming battleship. It was a single ship. And it was old. The ship was large, but its design was blocky and practical. It had no smooth, graceful lines. It was all sharp angles and heavy metal plates. The hull was covered in dents and scars from countless past battles. It moved slowly, without the quick, elegant energy of UGC ships. It looked like a tired, old worker, not a glorious warrior. The ship's identification code flashed on Kaido's screen. It was registered to the Terran Systems Union. A human ship. This was their reinforcement. This single, ancient transport. The hope that had kept Kaido going for the last 4 hours vanished completely, replaced by a cold, hard lump of despair. He had asked for an army. He had been promised a contingent. They had sent a single, rusty ship. He looked from the view screen, showing the advancing Cthar swarm, to his sensor screen, showing the one, lonely human ship. He put his head in his hands. One ship, he whispered, his voice breaking. They sent one ship. Hana put a hand on his shoulder. She did not say anything. There was nothing to say. They had held on for the reinforcements. And now that they were here, it did not matter at all. The battle was already over. They had just not admitted it yet. The large, old human ship moved slowly towards them, a silent, sad punchline to their desperate joke. The old human ship filled the main view screen. It was even bigger up close, a giant block of scarred metal. It moved slowly and carefully towards the main hangar bay of Serenity Point. It did not ask for permission to land. It just came. On the command deck, Kaido could only watch. His hope was gone. He felt empty. What could one ship do against the entire Cthar swarm? It was a cruel joke. Kaido, Hana said, her voice sharp, the Cthar have stopped their attack. He looked up. She was right. On the screen, the Cthar ships were holding their position. They were not firing anymore. They floated in the darkness, silent and watching. Why did they stop? Kaido asked. They were about to destroy us. Hana pointed at the human ship on the screen. I think they are looking at that. They have never seen a human ship before. They are confused. They are wondering what it is. Kaido shook his head. It does not matter what it is. It is just one ship. They will realize that soon and finish us off. We have a little more time because of it, Hana said. We should meet them. It is the proper thing to do. Kaido did not want to go. He wanted to sit in his chair and wait for the end. But Hana was right. He was the communications officer. It was his job. He stood up. His body felt heavy. Okay, let's go. They left the command deck and walked through the quiet, damaged hallways of the colony. The few soldiers they passed looked scared and lost. They reached the large main hangar bay. The air was cold. The big outer doors were closed, but they were damaged. A cold wind blew through small cracks. Kaido stood with a small group of 10 UGC soldiers. The soldiers held their energy rifles tightly. Their white and blue armor looked clean and new, but their faces were tired. A loud, grinding sound filled the hangar. The human ship was landing. It was not a smooth, quiet landing like a UGC ship. It was loud and mechanical. The entire floor shook. The ship settled down with a final, heavy thud. It was huge, taking up almost the entire hangar. The metal of its hull was not smooth and shiny. It was rough and covered in patches. Kaido could see spots where parts had been cut out and replaced with different colored metal. It was an ugly, practical ship. Then, the main ramp at the front of the ship began to lower. It opened with a loud, hydraulic hiss. Thick, white air poured out from inside, like the ship was breathing cold fog. Everyone in the hangar watched. The UGC soldiers stood up straight, trying to look strong. A figure appeared in the mist at the top of the ramp. It was a man. He walked down the ramp slowly. His steps were heavy and sure. He was not wearing the sleek, form-fitting armor of the UGC. His combat suit was a dull green and gray color. It was made of thick, layered material and hard plates. It looked heavy and old-fashioned. He did not carry a sleek energy rifle. A large, blocky weapon was slung on his back. His face was calm. His eyes moved around the hangar, looking at everything, but he showed no emotion. He walked right up to Kaido. He was not very tall, but he felt solid, like a rock. "I am Jean," the man said. His voice was calm and quiet, but it was easy to hear him in the silent hangar. "Commander of the Terran First Legion." Kaito swallowed. I am Communications Officer Kaito. We sent the request for help." He looked past Jean at the ship. Only one man had come down the ramp. Are you the contingent? Is it just you?" Jean looked at him for a moment. Then a very small, faint smile touched his lips. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. "No," Jean said. "We are not just me." He turned and made a simple hand signal towards the ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a deep, rhythmic sound started from inside the ship. It was the sound of many boots hitting metal at the same time. Thump, thump, thump. The sound grew louder. It echoed in the huge hangar. It was a powerful, frightening sound. Then, they started to come out. Not in a messy, disorganized group. They came out in perfect lines. Row after row after row of soldiers. They all wore the same heavy, green and gray combat suits as Jean. They carried the same kind of blocky, solid weapons. Their faces were serious and focused. They did not look at the UGC soldiers. They looked straight ahead. They marched down the ramp and into the hangar. They kept coming. The lines of soldiers spread out, filling the vast space. The sound of their boots was like a giant heartbeat. Kaito's mouth fell open. He could not believe what he was seeing. How were so many people inside one ship? The ship was big, but not this big. It was impossible. Hannah stared, her engineer's mind trying to solve the puzzle. "Cryostasis," she whispered to Kaito. "They must have been frozen for the journey, packed in like tools in a box. No comfort, no extra space, just maximum capacity." She looked at the ship with new eyes. It was not a warship. It was a delivery truck for an army. The soldiers kept coming. 50, 100, 200. They kept coming until the hangar was filled with a sea of green and gray. There were hundreds of them, maybe 1,000. Finally, the last soldier marched into place. The sound of boots stopped. The hangar was completely silent again. 1,000 human soldiers stood perfectly still, waiting. Kaito looked at the immense crowd of soldiers. Then he looked at the single, old ship. His mind could not put the two things together. "Commander Jean," Kaito said, his voice shaky. "You said, Legion, there is only one ship." Jean turned his calm eyes back to Kaito. "We travel light," he said. As if that explained everything, that he turned to his army. He did not shout. He did not need to. His voice carried easily in the quiet. "Sergeant Sumin." A woman stepped forward from the front line. She had short, black hair and a sharp, intelligent face. "Sir, perimeter defense. Standard pattern Delta. I want a full threat assessment in 15 minutes. "Yes, sir," Sumin said. She turned and started barking orders. The sea of soldiers suddenly broke into organized groups, moving quickly towards the hangar exits. They moved with a purpose the UGC soldiers had lost days ago. Jean turned back to Kaito and Hannah. "Now," he said, "take me to your command center. Show me your situation. Tell me about the Kthar." Kaito just nodded, still in a state of shock. The help he had asked for was here. It was not what he had expected. It was something much, much different. And as he looked at the calm face of Commander Jean, he felt a new emotion. Something he had not felt since the siege began. It was not hope. Not YET. Was fear. The command deck of Serenity Point felt different with Commander Jean standing in the middle of it. He was a quiet presence, but he seemed to fill the entire room. The UGC officers spoke in hushed voices and moved carefully around him. Kaito stood next to Jean, showing him the main screen. He explained their desperate situation. He pointed to the swarm of Kthar ships on the display. He showed the data from their failed attacks. "Our energy weapons cannot penetrate their armor," Kaito finished, his voice heavy with defeat. "We have tried everything. High frequency, low frequency. It is all the same. They absorb the energy." Jean listened. He did not speak. His eyes moved over the screens, taking in the information. Hannah stepped forward. She pulled up a technical diagram of a Kthar warrior. "It is their exoskeleton," she said, pointing. "It acts like a capacitor. It stores the energy from our blasts. The more we shoot them, the more powerful they become. It is a terrible design for us." Jean nodded slowly. He looked at the diagram, then at the live feed of the waiting Kthar swarm. "You fight them with light," he said, his tone neutral. "We will fight them with force." Just then, a young UGC officer rushed up to Kaito. "Officer Kaito, the human soldiers. They are leaving the colony. They are marching out into the open, towards the eastern plains." "What?" Kaito spun around to face Jean. "Commander, you cannot do that. It is suicide. The Kthar will see them and wipe them out." Your soldiers need to stay inside our defensive perimeter and reinforce our shield lines. Jean looked at Kaito. His expression was calm, but his eyes were firm. Your defensive perimeter is broken. Your shields have failed. Staying inside these walls is waiting to die. We did not come here to die with you. He turned to one of his own soldiers, who stood by the door with a large, boxy communication device. Jean to Sergeant Sumin. Status report. Sumin's voice crackled back, sharp and clear. We are in position, sir. The ground is good. Hard rock, just like you said. We have visual on the primary Cthar nest. It is dug into the cliffs east of the colony. Good, Jean said. Proceed with Phase 1. Kaito stared, horrified. What is Phase 1? What are you doing? On the main view screen, a new window opened. It showed a video feed from a soldier's helmet. They could see a group of human soldiers, led by Sumin, moving quickly across the rocky plain. They did not hide. They moved with purpose. The Cthar noticed them immediately. From holes in the cliff face, dozens of the insect-like warriors poured out. They moved fast on their many legs, their sharp claws scratching the stone. They charged towards the small group of humans. Call them back, Kaito yelled. You are sending them to their deaths. Jean did not answer. He just watched the screen. Sumin and her soldiers stopped running. They turned to face the charging horde. They did not raise their rifles. Instead, they dropped to one knee and pulled out heavy, cylindrical objects from their packs. Launching sonic disruptors, Sumin said calmly. Thump, thump, thump. The cylinders flew through the air and landed in the path of the Cthar. They did not explode. Instead, they emitted a deep, pulsing sound. It was a low, vibrating hum that made the command deck speakers rattle. The effect on the Cthar was immediate and dramatic. The charging creatures stumbled. They slowed down. They started moving in confused circles, their antennae twitching wildly. They clawed at their own heads. The sonic pulses were disorienting them, attacking their sensitive hearing and vibration senses. Now, Jean said into his communicator. The human soldiers raised their weapons, but they did not fire energy beams. Their guns made a loud, sharp sound. Bang! 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 They were firing solid projectiles. Bullets. The bullets hit the confused Cthar. The hard shells did not absorb the physical impact. The bullets did not deliver energy to be stored. They delivered kinetic force. They cracked the shiny armor. They shattered it. Pieces of dark shell flew into the air. The Cthar warriors shrieked, a new sound of pain and surprise. For the first time, they were being hurt. Hannah leaned forward, her eyes wide. Of course, she whispered. Their shells are designed for energy dispersion. They are brittle against physical impact. It is like hitting glass with a hammer. On the screen, Sumin's squad was retreating, but they were not running away. They were leading the enraged Cthar on a chase. They ran towards a narrow canyon. Phase 2 is ready, sir, Sumin reported, her voice steady even as she ran. The Cthar followed the humans into the canyon. As the last creature entered, there was a huge explosion at the canyon entrance. Rocks tumbled down, blocking their way out. Another explosion happened at the far end, trapping them. From the cliffs above, human soldiers appeared. They leaned over the edge and dropped small, round objects into the trapped crowd of Cthar below. The grenades exploded, but it was not a flash of light. It was a cloud of sharp metal pieces. Shrapnel. The metal pieces flew in all directions, cutting and tearing through the Cthar warriors. The canyon became a killing box. In less than 10 minutes. It was over. The entire Cthar attack group was destroyed. The humans had not lost a single soldier. On the command deck, there was complete silence. The UGC officers could not believe what they had just seen. They had been fighting these creatures for weeks and losing badly. The humans had just killed dozens of them in minutes. Kaito looked from the screen to Jin's calm face. He did not know what to say. Jean turned to Hannah. Chief Engineer Hannah. Sergeant Sumin reports that the Cthar artillery emplacement on the southern ridge is using a type of plasma core. My soldiers can disable the weapon, but they cannot safely remove the core. We need it. Hannah blinked. You need it? What for? For your shield generator, Jean said. Your power coupling is broken. That plasma core has more than enough energy to run your shields for a week, if you reroute it through the secondary conduits. Hannah's mind was already working, thinking about the wiring, the connections. Yes, it could work, but it would be a direct, raw power feed. It is dangerous. The systems were not designed for it. Can you do it? Jean asked. Hannah looked at him, then at the screen showing the victorious human soldiers. A spark of determination lit in her eyes. Yes, she said. I can do it. Good, Jean said. He spoke into his communicator. Sumin, you have a new mission. Secure that plasma core. Bring it back to the colony for Engineer Hannah. Understood, sir. Kaido finally found his voice. Commander, your tactics, they are so different. So brutal. Jean looked at him. You fought a war of technology. You tried to outsmart them. He gestured to the screen, where the human soldiers were now calmly collecting the plasma core. We are fighting a war of attrition. We are here to outlast them. And to do that, we use whatever works. He walked away to look at another screen, leaving Kaido alone with his thoughts. The hope that had disappeared was now slowly returning. But it was a different kind of hope. It was not the hope for a magical rescue. It was the hope that comes from seeing a door kicked down by a very practical, very strong boot. The victory in the canyon was short. The Cthar were not stupid. They learned. They saw that the humans' projectile weapons could hurt them. They saw their traps. So they changed their plan. They stopped sending small groups. They decided to send everyone. On the command deck screens, the entire Cthar swarm began to move. It was a terrifying sight. Every single ship, every single warrior on the ground, started to advance towards Serenity Point. It was a tidal wave of claws and chitinous shells. They were done with testing. They were done with waiting. This was the final, overwhelming attack. Kaido felt his blood run cold. This is it, he whispered. This is the end. There are too many. Even the humans cannot stop that. The UGC command was in a panic. An admiral's face appeared on the main screen, his voice tight with fear. Serenity Point. The swarm is converging on your position. You must hold them. Use the human forces to reinforce the main gate. We are sending evacuation orders for key personnel. Kaido looked at Jean, expecting him to start giving orders to form a defensive line. Jean did not look at the admiral. He looked at the swarm on the screen, his head tilted slightly. He did not look scared. He looked thoughtful, like a man studying a difficult puzzle. Reinforcing the main gate is a waste of soldiers, Jean said, his voice calm and clear. They will simply overrun it. We will be crushed. The admiral on the screen sputtered. That is an order, Commander. You will defend that gate. Jean ignored him. He turned to Hannah. Engineer, your main reactor, the one that powers the entire colony. How much energy is in it right now? Hannah was confused. The reactor? It is almost depleted. We have been running on backups for days. Why? If you triggered a full containment breach, Jean continued. His tone as casual as if he were asking about the weather. What would happen? The command deck went silent. Everyone stared at Jean. A reactor breach was the worst disaster imaginable. It was what every colony feared. Hannah's eyes widened. A breach? It would create a massive electromagnetic pulse. An EMP. It would fry every unshielded circuit on this side of the planet. But the radiation would kill everyone here. It would destroy the colony forever. The radiation would be contained by the reactor shell, would it not? Jean asked. The initial blast is mostly energy. A wave of pure static. Yes, in the first few seconds, but... And the Cthar, Jean interrupted. Their ships, their weapons, their warriors, they are all connected by a bioelectric network. It is like their nervous system. What would an EMP do to them? Understanding dawned on Hannah's face. She looked from Jean to the screen showing the swarm. It would short-circuit them. It would be like a seizure for their entire race. It would not kill them, but it would stun them. It would turn them off like switching off a light. For a few minutes, maybe. Exactly, Jean said. Kaido finally found his voice. It was a scream. You want to blow up our reactor? Are you insane? You would kill us all to stun them for a few minutes? What good would that do? Jean turned his calm gaze to Kaido. It would give us a window. A few minutes where they cannot fight, where they cannot move, where their ships are dead in the sky. In those few minutes, my legion can do its work. No! The UGC admiral shouted from the screen. I forbid it. That reactor is UGC property. You do not have the authority. Jean walked over to the communication console and looked directly at the admiral's face on the screen. You asked for our help, he said, his voice low and steady. This is our help. You can either die with your property, or you can live with our solution. The choice is simple. He did not wait for an answer. He turned off the admiral's feed. The screen went dark. He looked at Hannah. Can you do it? Can you create a controlled breach? One big enough for the EMP, but small enough to keep the radiation contained. Hannah's hands were shaking. She was an engineer. Her whole life was about building things, fixing things, making them work. Not about breaking them in the worst way possible. She looked at Kaido's terrified face. She looked at the hopeless UGC soldiers on the deck. Then she looked at Jean. His calmness was like a rock in a storm. He was not asking her to destroy everything. He was asking her to create a chance. A very small, very dangerous chance. She took a deep breath and stood up straight. Yes, she said, her voice firming. I can do it. I can override the safety protocols and force an energy surge through the primary core. It will be like a heart attack for the reactor. It will release a massive EMP wave, and then the system will automatically shut down to contain the meltdown. We will have no power, but we should be safe from radiation if we are inside the reinforced structures. Good, Jean said. How long do you need? 20 minutes, Hannah said. I have to do it manually from the engineering room. Go, Jean said. Hannah turned and ran from the command deck. Jean picked up his heavy communicator. All units, this is Jean. Prepare for Operation Blackout. The sky will go dark. The enemy will fall asleep. When they do, we wake them up. For good. He then gave a series of quick, precise orders, moving his soldiers into new positions around the colony. Not to defend, but to attack. Kaido could only watch, his mind racing. This was a crazy plan. It was a gamble with all their lives. He wanted to argue. He wanted to stop it. But he looked at the swarm on the screen, now so close he could see the details on their ships. They had no other choice. The minutes ticked by. The swarm grew closer. The lead Cthar ships began to fire their green energy beams. The shots hit the colony's outer walls, shaking the entire structure. Then, Hannah's voice came over the communicator, loud and clear. Jean, I am ready. The reactor is set to overload on my mark. The countdown will be 10 seconds. Jean picked up his communicator. He took a deep breath. Do it. A loud, automated voice echoed through the entire colony from the emergency speakers. Critical reactor overload. Containment breach imminent. 10, 9, 8. Kaido held onto his console. He closed his eyes. 7, 6, 5. He could hear the screech of the Cthar ships outside. 4, 3, 2. Jean stood perfectly still, watching the main screen. 1. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, a deep, silent pulse of pure white energy exploded from the center of the colony. It was not fire. It was not an explosion. It was a wave of invisible force. It washed over everything. Every light on the command deck flickered wildly and then went out. The main screens turned to black. The low hum of the computers and life support systems stopped. The only light came from the emergency floor lights, which ran on simple batteries. The colony was plunged into a deep, profound silence. Kaido rushed to a window and looked out. The green energy beams from the Cthar ships had vanished. The ships themselves were dark. They were not moving. They just floated, dead in space. On the ground, the charging Cthar warriors had stopped. They were frozen in place. Some had fallen over. Their limbs twitched. They were completely helpless. The entire battlefield had gone silent and dark. Then, a new sound began. It was not a siren. It was not an alarm. It was a deep, raw, haunting sound from an ancient instrument. It was a human war horn. The sound echoed across the silent plains, and from the darkness around Serenity Point, the human legion began to advance. The sound of the war horn faded, leaving a deeper silence in its wake. Then, a new sound began. It was the sound of boots. Hundreds, then thousands of boots, hitting the hard ground in a steady, rhythmic march. From the darkness around Serenity Point, the human legion appeared. They did not run. They did not scream. They walked. They moved forward in a long, unbroken line. In the dim light from the stars and the colony's emergency lamps, they looked like shadows coming to life. Kaido watched from the command deck window, his face pressed against the cold glass. He could not see much, but he could see the shapes moving. He could hear the march. It was the most frightening and beautiful thing he had ever witnessed. The Cthar on the ground were starting to stir. The EMP's effect was wearing off. Their limbs twitched more strongly. A low, confused chittering sound began to rise from the field. They were waking up. The human line kept marching forward. Commander Jin's voice was calm on the communicator. Legion, advance. Shield wall. The front line of humans stopped. They raised large, rectangular shields from their backs. The shields were made of a dull, gray metal. They locked them together with a loud, sharp clang. The sound repeated itself up and down the line until a solid wall of metal stood between the colony and the Cthar. The Cthar were fully awake now. They saw the humans. They saw the wall. They shrieked in rage and charged. They were clumsy at first, their systems still recovering, but their anger was real. The first wave of Cthar crashed into the shield wall. It did not break. The human soldiers behind the shields braced themselves. The impact was tremendous, but the wall held. Then, from the small gaps between the shields, long, heavy spears shot out. They were not energy lances. They were simple, sharpened metal poles. The spears stabbed into the Cthar, piercing their brittle shells. The creatures screamed and fell back. Second line, volley fire. Jin's voice ordered. From behind the shield wall, the second line of human soldiers raised their rifles. The night air was suddenly torn apart by the sound of their guns. Bang! Bang! Bang!
Bang!
The bullets flew over the heads of the front line and into the crowd of Cthar. The projectiles cracked shells and tore through limbs. The Cthar did not understand this kind of fighting. They were used to energy beams they could absorb. They were not used to solid walls they could not break. They were not used to physical projectiles that shattered their bodies. They pushed forward again, more frantically this time. Their claws scraped against the metal shields. Their weight pressed against the wall.
Testudo formation.
On my mark, Jean commanded. The shield wall changed. The soldiers in the center held their shields firm. The soldiers on the sides turned their shields outward. The soldiers in the back raised their shields overhead, creating a protective roof. The entire formation looked like a slow-moving metal tortoise. The Cthar swarmed over it, trying to find a way in. Their claws could not break through the overlapping shields. They were stuck on top of it, scratching uselessly at the metal. Inside the formation, the humans were safe. They kept marching forward, pushing into the heart of the Cthar swarm. The trapped creatures on top were knocked off or pulled down and stabbed with spears from small openings. Kaito watched, his mouth open. It was not a battle of technology. It was a battle of ancient ideas. Discipline against chaos. Formation against swarm. It was brutal, simple, and it was working. On the ground, Sergeant Sumin led her squad. They were not in the main shield wall. They were hunters. They moved through the chaos, targeting the larger, more dangerous Cthar warriors. Sumin saw one of the big ones, a creature with massive crushing claws, trying to flank the main formation. Grenade! She yelled. One of her soldiers threw a metal ball. It landed near the large Cthar and exploded. The creature was not killed, but its legs were damaged. It stumbled. Sumin did not wait. She ran forward, her rifle raised. She did not shoot from a distance. She ran right up to the stunned creature and fired directly into its face. The close-range shots shattered its head. It fell to the ground, twitching. The fight went on like this. The humans did not retreat. They did not break. They advanced step by step, killing everything in their path. The Cthar, for all their numbers and ferocity, could not stop them. They were being systematically destroyed. After what felt like an eternity, the sounds of battle began to fade. The gunfire became less frequent. The shrieks of the Cthar turned into weak, dying sounds. The first light of the morning sun began to touch the horizon. It revealed a scene of utter devastation. The ground was covered with the broken shells of Cthar warriors. Their ships still floated dark and dead in the sky. The human legion stood in the middle of the field. Their shields were dented and scratched. Their uniforms were stained. But they were standing. They had won. Slowly, the shield wall broke apart. The soldiers stood at ease, watching the sunrise. The command deck door slid open. Jean walked in. His combat suit was smeared with dark, sticky fluid. He looked tired, but his eyes were calm. He walked over to the window and stood next to Kaito. They looked out at the battlefield together. The sun was rising, painting the sky in colors of orange and pink. It was a beautiful morning. Kaito did not know what to say. You saved us, he finally whispered. Jean shook his head slowly.
No.
You saved yourselves. You were strong enough to hold on until we arrived. You were brave enough to try my plan. He looked at Kaito. We were just the tool you needed. Hannah came onto the command deck. Her face was smudged with grease and she looked exhausted, but she was smiling. The reactor is in safe shutdown. The core is intact. We have no power, but we are alive. We can rebuild. She stood next to them, looking out at the field where the human soldiers were already starting to help the wounded and clear the debris. Kaito looked at the Legion. He remembered his first feeling of despair when he saw their single old ship. He remembered his fear when he saw them march out to fight. Now he understood. You are not like other soldiers, Kaito said to Jean. Jean watched his people work. The galaxy has forgotten some things, he said quietly. It has forgotten that the best weapon is not the most advanced one. It is the one that works. It has forgotten that the strongest shield is not made of energy. It is made of men and women who will not break. He turned to Kaito and Hannah. You requested reinforcements. You thought you needed more advanced technology. But you did not. You needed a different solution. We are that solution. Outside, the human legion stood guard over the quiet colony. They were not sleek or shiny. They were scarred and practical. They were a reminder of an older, simpler, and fiercer kind of strength. And as the sun rose fully over Serenity Point, it was clear that they had not just won a battle. They had brought a forgotten truth back to the stars.